Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of the trailer footage for Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four, shown exclusively in Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con, a movie now officially titled Fantastic Four: First Steps. This was really a concept trailer that somehow Matt Shakman was able to put together in just a few weeks' time, showing some camera and wardrobe tests of the actors with some previs footage, but all edited together in a way to give a stunning and coherent vision for this MCU Fantastic Four movie coming in July 2025. So I'm gonna break down everything we saw and heard, shot by shot, for Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four: First Steps, and yeah, I'm gonna try to explain how this might lay the seeds of Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. But before we get into it, yes, I am wearing our Fantastic Four themed shirt design that you can find at nerdriot.shop. Grabbing one of these is the best way to support what we're doing here at New Rockstars. Okay, so the film is now officially titled Fantastic Four: First Steps, and First Steps obviously invokes Neil Armstrong's quote upon landing on the moon in 1969, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," and that scratchy audio sent from space is really how much of Reed Richards' audio has been filtered in this trailer footage, showing a test flight and a launch pad. The footage is designed in every possible way to evoke that sense of idealism and astral dreaming of the 1960s space age, when NASA astronauts were celebrities and American heroes, and America as a country just celebrated science and engineering in ways that they haven't in any decade since. But I also think that this movie will be the first steps in other thematic ways, like the first steps into a multiversal war as we head into Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, but also maybe on a simpler, sweeter level, the first steps of Reed and Sue's child, Franklin Richards. We did not see Bebe Franklin in this footage, but I theorize that this whole account could be from his point of view as he looks back on the legacy of his family and encodes it into the archives of the Future Foundation. So the Fantastic Four part of the panel began with director Matt Shakman explaining how they haven't begun official production yet, but that they've been rendering a lot of concept art and previs, animatics, VFX tests, and that part of their pre-production was talking to scientists, talking to animal experts, and going out to the desert to find the best rock to make the thing out of. And by animal experts, I assume they could be looking at animals that use camouflage to inspire the way Sue Storm's invisibility or cloaking could work. But Shakman said that they wanted to be very true to the comics, and the concept art that was around San Diego all weekend showed Sue with a kind of short haircut that was outlined in a dashed line, which I absolutely love. Panel moderator Rob Delaney reminded attendees that Matt Shakman was the director of WandaVision and asked what 60s research Shakman did to make this feel authentically from that decade, though he also acknowledged that the film is set in an alternate universe of 1960s New York. And Shakman said that we're not just doing the 60s, we're doing the retro futurist 60s. So they did a lot of research into the futurists of the time, like Sid Mead, to get inspiration to build a whole new world, which will include both of what you remember from 60s New York and some things you've never seen before. And more than just visual aesthetics, the 60s was about optimism, about looking to the stars, about dreaming, about traveling to space. It's about, with the right heart and the right mind, you can do anything. And just a reminder to the viewers, Sid Mead was an industrial designer and a neo-futurist concept artist who was really active in the late 50s and the early 60s. He made designs that ended up being used in science fiction films like Blade Runner, Aliens, and Tron. And really, when we say the term retrofuturist, we're talking about what artists in the late 50s going into the 60s thought the future would look like, and inspired shows like The Jetsons and why Disney's Imagineers designed Tomorrowland to look the way it does. We actually got some official concept art of the alternate reality New York in this movie. And thanks to you, Michael Buckner, for taking this great photo. We love you, Michael Buckner. But then Shakman said, we put together some pre-shoots, some animatics, we cobbled together something to give you a sense of what this movie will be about. And we see some footage, and it fucking rocks. The footage opens with the logo of the Future Foundation, and a muffled announcer voice says, "The Future Foundation presents a special look at the Fantastic Four." And more on that Future Foundation later. But this footage is all shot in a 4:3 aspect ratio, kind of like an old 60s TV show. And in this case, it's a kids' science show called Fantastic Science with Dr. Richards. It's almost like Watch Mr. Wizard, but that show began in 1971 and was just in that cranky Mr. Wizard's home when he yelled at kids all the time. So you have to imagine something a little bit older than that and more in an academic setting, but definitely a TV set. It's a classroom with a wide green chalkboard, and we see Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards scribbling on that chalkboard, lecturing, "This equation not only confirms alternate dimensions, it suggests that parallel Earths exist on different dimensional planes." And then he turns around and sees the kids are in a major snooze fest, and he says, who wants to see a big explosion? And the kids go, me! And then he goes, glasses, and they pop on some goggles, and he ignites what looks like a jet engine, perhaps the thruster of a certain rocket ship he might be blasting off in later. So right off the bat, this tells us how Reed is taking the first steps into multiversal navigation, making contact maybe with Universe 616, discovering incursions perhaps, maybe even building a path to the formation of the Council of Reeds, which could include John Krasinski, and maybe even another Reed mentioned by a certain insane cameo that we won't spoil in this video from Deadpool and Wolverine, the Reed played by Ioan Gruffudd, who was confirmed to be aware of and possibly even have been sent down to the void of the TVA. Now, it's not totally clear what this classroom is supposed to be, but they clearly shot it on a soundstage with Pedro Pascal in these opening weeks, and I think it's meant to just show how the Fantastic Four are celebrity figures in this reality, because a big theme of the Fantastic Four from the comics is just the idea of fame, and how fame isn't just a vain thing, but can be used practically in like a friendly way to help each other. Because when the Fantastic Four return from space with powers, out of the four, only Ben Grimm has to walk around with his powers as this like cursed appearance. So to make Ben feel better, Reed just decides to make all four of them a family of public media figures, inviting cameras and media attention into their lives. And that's really a lot of what the following footage is in this trailer. It looks like Matt Shakman put the cast in their costumes and shot them on a soundstage with blue screen backgrounds in some cases that he could composite with previs art from Marvel's team, and in some cases even shot them with like a 16mm camera to make it feel like a documentary crew before their space flight. So now the music swells in this trailer footage, and it sounds a lot like Marvel Studios' opening fanfare, and that's because both were composed by Michael Giacchino. And Kevin Feige said that they were going to have Giacchino out on stage, but he was elsewhere at San Diego Comic-Con hosting the NASA panel, which is like perfect, right? So there's a wide shot of this alternate reality launch pad bordering some water in a massive tower facing an island where the launch pad is, and I want to say this tower is the Baxter building based off of another shot. There's footage of Reed standing beside his best friend, Ben Grimm, played by Ebon Moss Bachrach, and they're zipping up their spacesuits with American flags as they're being suited up for this space mission, and Reed says, best pilot in the world right here, and Ben says, no, best looking maybe, and Reed says, that's one interpretation, and Ben responds, that's the only interpretation, and Reed goes, of course. Can't you both be really handsome, Pedro and Ebon? Then we get more shots of this alternate retrofuturist Manhattan, and we see the Fantastic Car flying up past what I assume is a Baxter building, or it might just be this alternate towering Chrysler building or Empire State Building from the art that we saw before.
So pros know that Comic-Con isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any news, you've got to come prepared. And for us, that means having a pocket full of one-shot energy chews, one-shot focus chews, and one-shot voice drops to keep us going no matter what.
What has it got in its pockets?
If you've got to wake up early to get in line at Hall H, then pop a one-shot energy chew to feel like... Trying to tune out the noise of the floor so you can stay focused on your social media feed. One-shot focus chews have you feeling... And if you're recording a video, say like the one you're watching right now, after a long day of shouting over a herd of nerds to your producer,
you guys have officially made me lose my marbles!
one-shot voice drops make your throat feel refreshed.
I move away from the mic to laugh.
Thank you to One Shot Energy Chews, One Shot Focus Chews, and One Shot Voice Drops, not just for sponsoring this video, but for making sure we got the most out of Comic-Con. Stock up on One Shot today by going to oneshotenergy.com/new rockstars for 10% off your order.
But this next scene would now be after the Fantastic Four return from their space mission and would be showing their home family life to outsiders and in the media and government officials. Because we see Sue and Reed showing visitors their home in the Baxter building, and Sue says, here is the kitchen, and Reed puts his arm around her waist and says, we make a point to have family dinner here once a week, Sunday at 8 on the dot. No matter what, we're all here. Now, it's clearly really important to Reed to normalize the Fantastic Four as a typical American family so that society accepts and welcomes them. We do not see any of these four actually use their powers in this trailer. We don't see any stretchiness from Reed, no invisibility from Sue, no flaming on by Johnny, and barely any big ol' rock body from Ben, because it's too early for all that. They haven't finished those designs yet, but I'm telling you, these actors all have have the personalities of these heroes down on lock. Like Pedro Pascal is bringing a nerdy charm, which I've described as Professor Frink, but he's also just trying so hard to make the public love all of them, and it comes with a bit of desperation and flop sweat that's really fun to see from Pedro Pascal. We see what I'm pretty sure is the curved Baxter building as the four of them walk forward from it. And Ben is in the shot the Thing, but he is shown from a distance. So now we cut to this 60s dating game show called Let's Make a Love Match, which is just such a great mouthful, kind of like, the BoJack Horseman game show. But the host says to a woman, "You talked to 3 terrific fellas today, now it's time to make a match. What do you say?" And the woman says, "I choose contestant number 3. And now the camera pans over to Reed and Johnny and big ol' Ben in chairs, but they're silhouetted against a bright backdrop. You don't really see Ben in all of his detail, but Ben is the lucky bachelor number 3, and he is the right amount of thick. And I just assume that this woman's reaction to him will be like, "Oh my God," and she'll faint, or she'll just say like, "Oh my." And hey, maybe it could even be Alicia Masters, and she doesn't care because she's blind. Throughout this whole trailer are close-ups of their blue spacesuits and their names printed beneath their helmets: Richards, Grimm, J-Storm, and S-Storm. And there's more launch and test flight animatics footage, and it's very reminiscent of Apollo 13, The Right Stuff, The First Man, and how all of those movies have pre-flight protocol checklists. And we get one here. Sue says, "Comms check, everybody sound off," and Ben says, "Check," and Johnny says, "Check," and then Sue says, "The last one you heard was my baby brother Jonathan Storm, and ladies, he is very single." And we punch it on Joseph Quinn's face, and then everyone in Hall H is like, "Ooh, yes." Then we hear some voices of Reed, I think over the radio, as we hear, "We have liftoff," and their ship, which is far more Sid Mead inspired compared to NASA's space shuttles in our reality, blasts off as Giacchino's music sings and the rocket breaks the sound barrier and shreds into the stratosphere. And perhaps because it's Giacchino, choir voices shriek, "Fantastic Four!" And we think we're done, but no. There's a tag at the end of this trailer. We are inside what I assume is the Baxter building, and then a giant purple face appears, a set of angry eyes looking through the windows. It's Galactus, who will be played by Ralph Ineson in this movie. Now, he is looking into the windows of a skyscraper. Galactus should be bigger than the planet, right? If he wants to eat us. In this case, he'd be the size of like a city block. That would be smaller than a Celestial. But the scale of this moment is certainly frightening on its own. It's kind of like that giant Santa Claus horror short. Now, there's no sighting of Silver Surfer Shallabal, played by Julia Garner in this movie. There's no sighting of Herbie the robot. I really just think Matt Shackman just brought in the cast for a wardrobe fitting in a camera test on a soundstage with some green screens and had them riff in character, shot it with some 16mm, and then the chemistry was just so good and natural that he just was able to work with the previs team to make something truly great for all of us at Hall H. It's important to remember that this is all framed and maybe even quote-unquote edited in the context of this Future Foundation short. That's how it opened, and I think we are meant to see it as perhaps found footage spliced together for prosperity to record the history of a dead universe after its destruction from Galactus. The Future Foundation is a group of young heroes put together by Reed Richards of the comics, and later it even includes a white-suited Spider-Man. I've been theorizing that the first member of this foundation could be Franklin Richards. So Kevin Feige confirmed that the Fantastic Four will return in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. So that ties him directly into Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. So let's talk about it briefly. Yes, it's exciting to have Robert Downey Jr. back playing a major Marvel character, especially now after winning an Oscar for playing the villainous Louis Strauss in Oppenheimer, the man who wishes he had invented the atomic bomb and to have been the man who moved the Earth. But how are we supposed to see the iconic face of Tony Stark Iron Man recast as Dr. Victor Von Doom? Is he a variant Tony Stark in another universe who took a darker path in his life? Perhaps. I think Robert Downey Jr. is playing the actual Victor Von Doom of these upcoming films, but in the universe of the Fantastic Four, and when Galactus destroys it, this Victor will survive those events through his technological advances and then rise to become a multiversal villain of God Emperor Doom in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Now, why cast Robert Downey Jr. in this role? I kind of like the idea that Robert Downey Jr. could be playing the anchor being of certain universes, like the anchor being of the 616 universe as Tony Stark, and the anchor being of the Fantastic Four's universe as Doom. And that universe should have died with his own expiration, but his Earth was just destroyed and the rest of the universe was kept intact, and then it just kind of ended even prematurely of an anchor being's death. And that just felt cosmically wrong. And I think Marvel recognizes that we need someone that viewers of the Infinity Saga have been associating with as the smartest man in that universe to properly rival the new smartest man of the Marvel Universe, Reed Richards. And then also to be able to empathize with this Doctor Doom as a scientist who suffered losing his world and wants to try to have more control over every other apocalyptic event throughout the multiverse.
Okay, that's everything we saw, but be sure to subscribe to New Rockstars as well as the Break Room and the Deep Dive. Specifically, we have a lot of great content about what we saw at Comic-Con, and of course, our Easter egg breakdown of Deadpool and Wolverine. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.